thank you for coming this evening. For those of you that don't know me, I am Kim Timmins, the Year 9 Year Advisor. Been there since Year 7 and hopefully all the way to Year 12, and that's what tonight is going to be all about, the progression of the boys from now until then. First of all, there it is. We must acknowledge country, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we meet on today, the Guringai people to the east, the Darug people to the west, past, present and emerging, the elders, and also extend that to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here tonight or watching via the stream. You right? Oh, it's a bit flickering. Okay. Is that? No, it's still going. There we go. Thank you, Oscar. It's interesting, Mr. Horo was talking to the Year 12s, the new Year 12s today, about how technology, you know, if it fails, it's no excuse. So apologies for that. So what is tonight about? Tonight is about communicating our approach as a school towards stage 6, years 11 and 12. So for each student, it's going to look very different, and this fine lineup of people are going to explain that all to you in greater depth. It's underlining our commitment to ensure all students have access to as many subjects as possible and different pathways and patterns of study. As I said, all students are going to be different and they're going to be going different pathways. Your sons drive the eventual matrix pattern, so their decisions affect subjects and selections in stage 6. We're going to outline the ATAR system and the creative and non-ATAR opportunities that are on offer at Asquith. Outline the expectations and criteria needed by students to access the ATAR patterns of study. We've spoken to the boys this week how this term is very important for their yearly exams. Their results in those exams will help dictate what classes they are in for Year 10. And then that will drive their subject selections for stage 6. The pathways that we can offer them at school, and we've already started talking to a few boys about those pathways. The one I did miss is the supports that are available, and that's what these people are here for, these teachers, to discuss those. Outline the impact of mandatory subjects, particularly English and maths, because they are mandatory for the HSC in 2027. Current class impact on Year 11 subject selection. So that means what subject, so if you're doing 9 English 5, you're not going to be doing advanced English in Year 11 and 12. That kind of thing, which that'll be discussed a bit in more depth. And then there's also vet options, vocational educational training, ATAR and non-ATAR pathways, and leaving school and entering the workforce themselves. So I'll be around at the end if anybody would like to chat to me. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Grant now, and he will continue on. But thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Yes, there we go.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Timmins. Now, it might seem a bit overkill with the microphone, but when the recordings, they have to have the microphone so they can hear or play it back later on. So apologies for that if it seems a bit crazy. Again, welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's really, really an important night with respect to information. Now, there's a lot of information that's going to come across, but the good thing is that we have time to process, and you have time to process this as well. Why are we doing this now? You might think, oh, it's a little bit early. It's not. As Sir said, the boys are about to do their yearlies. Their yearly exams will set the platform and the basis for classes they will go into in year 10. It's always seemed a bit crazy to all of us sitting here that certain students will often turn up at the end of year 10 and go, oh, I want to do this advanced level course. Yet the journey they've travelled to that point has been at the lower levels or the other levels of attainment, if that makes sense. So while we want to challenge the boys, we don't want to set them up to fail. Year 11 and 12 is a critical year. Year 10 is a critical year, and their exams now is even more critical for what we springboard forward. So it seems crazy to ignore the data that we have on those boys, or all your sons, I should say, apologies, with respect to their path that they've travelled up to this point and their path going forward. Okay, and as Sir said, we'll have many pathways and many opportunities for them to excel. Things that we do need to be aware of now is that year 11 is an increasing workload. Whoops. Okay, homework is increased. Level of expectation in the classroom is increased. Now we have a number of really successful year 9 and 10 boys who have coasted in some ways along the fact that they're just naturally talented and intelligent in the classroom, and they pick things up really quickly. What we have found that sometimes those students do struggle when they go into 11 and 12. So those who have a better work ethic and have worked hard to achieve the results they achieve tend to excel and tend to sustain. Sometimes, not all the time, but often those students who have that natural flair and talent will sometimes struggle in year 11 if we get those subjects wrong as well, because they're not used to working and completing all that work and covering their homework. We spoke today to year 11 who have just gone into year 12, and we talked about high expectations. So we do have high expectations for all our boys. We want them to excel, but we don't want to set them up to fail or travel the wrong pathway. Not only do we have high expectations of the boys, we have high expectations of ourselves. So I like to think from the top down through all our teaching staff, they are working damn hard. In the recent holidays, we had nearly every day of the holidays, we had study sessions for the year 12 boys in their preparation, staff giving you their time to come in and do that. So we have high expectations of ourselves, and we do of our boys in the classroom. No matter what subject and no matter what level, and Mr. Horror will probably highlight that for us. Year 11, there are greater demands on your sons as well. Now, there's a few listed there, from part-time employment to obviously their homework to maybe even social networks and finding partners and so forth and trying to fit it all in. So the road they travel now is really, really important for setting them up for success in year 11 and 12 with respect to all these things impacting on their time. Some of the data we have. Over the last 6 years, I did change that one, but it hasn't changed. Over the last 6-7 years, we often have boys putting their hand up at about a rate of 50% of the cohort wanting to go to university at the start of year 11. What we have post-HSC is found that about 30 to 35% get in to university with a 90% success rate of what they want to do. Okay, so 50% wanting to do, but only about 30 to 35% of them actually getting in to what they want to do with a 90% success rate. Okay, so that's around about 1 in 3 as opposed to 1 in 2. Trades and apprenticeships, we generally get that spot on. So what that data is telling us is students who know their pathway and want to follow a pathway to a trade, we generally get that right. Those who wish to go or think they want to go to university, we haven't quite got that right in that period of time. Okay? And now we want them to challenge themselves, but once they get on that journey in that pathway, it's very hard for them to monitor or get off. Okay? Or make sure they follow through the right one. Now, often in that data, the unfortunate thing is that 15% of students who have picked the wrong pathway or thought they wanted to choose an ATAR or university pathway have fallen out of that data. So they often find that next year after school very challenging because they're not sure what they really want to do. Or they enter into the wrong university course, and that comes with a HECS and debt and so forth moving forward as well. So it's really important we're thinking these things through now. We don't have to have the answers now, but it's really important we're thinking these things moving forward. Is it going to change? Yes. So there's no perfect HSC pattern, and Mr. Horrow and the team work really hard to get numerous patterns of study for the boys moving forward. We allow the boys to choose their pattern, we interview them over that, we spend a lot of time massaging it and trying to maximise subjects and options for the boys to move forward. Be that ATAR based or non-ATAR based, be that vet based, be that creativity, be that academic, we work really, really hard to try and make that happen. So while there's no totally correct pathway, there are wrong pathways and wrong patterns. Now, we'd love to say we're perfect and we get that right all the time. We don't, but we need you guys to listen to us, and we need the boys to listen to us because we know their ability and their potential. Okay, we know what they've brought to the table, so to speak, up until this point, and we'll work really hard with them to make it work moving forward as well. Okay? It's important that their son is reflective of his abilities, and generally the boys are very good at this. They know what they're good at, they know what they enjoy, they know what they think they'd like to do, and we don't have to have an ultimate career goal at the end of year 10 or even now, but we do need to be thinking about where we might wish to travel. Their abilities, their skills and their interests will play a massive part in what we're going to help them pick and what we think they're going to pick, and then what we're going to work with you guys and them on picking and moving forward. Because as I said, there is wrong patterns. There's never the perfect right pattern though. Okay? Again, I'll be around for questions at the end. I'm going to throw to Mr. Horrow, who's going to go through a bit more of the ATAR and more of the information we do. But on the whole, again, thank you all for coming this evening as well. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Michael. I'm one of the deputy principals here at school, and part of my role is to look after the curriculum, which is essentially timetabling and subjects for students. Everyone here that you can see here today, plus many other teachers and staff members, support the school in developing the best curriculum for our boys based on the resources we have available. So just before I get into it, I just want to quickly talk about Year 11 and Year 12 and what that entails. And I'm not going to go into great depth. You'll get that talk or conversation next year when we do the actual subject selection night at Year 10. But essentially when boys go into, or any students go into Year 11, they need to undertake, or they must have at least 12 units. Essentially what that translates to is 6 subjects. If the boys choose to do extension maths or extension English, that's what we call a 1-unit course, and that's in addition to those 12 units. In Year 12, they can drop down to 10 units or 5 subjects, and there's benefits for doing that, and there's benefits for staying at 12 units, which I'll talk about again next year as well. So essentially, in Year 11, when the boys start their Year 12 pathway or HSC pathway, they must undertake 6 subjects. Now you'll probably hear that word thrown about a bit, pathways. Look, essentially there's 2. There's ATAR and there's non-ATAR. So both of them will result in the HSC, and quite often there's a misconception out there that a student has to undertake an ATAR pathway to get a HSC. That is not the case. So whether the boys do an ATAR or a non-ATAR pathway, they will still receive their HSC credential or the higher school certificate. Now, if the boys know they're going to go to university straight after school, then they'll need to do an ATAR pathway. But that also is a very high academic pathway in terms of the rigours of the subjects, the study, those type of things, and that really will be their main focus, not their one and only focus, but their main focus over Year 11 and Year 12 until they get into university, because like I said, the rigours of each course are quite high, and if the boys want to go to university, depending on what the university course is, they will need to receive a certain rank, or I shouldn't say mark because it's not a mark, but a rank in terms of the ATAR. Now, for those boys who are not interested in going to university but still want to complete Year 12, and just because your son doesn't want to go to university, you know, they should still be able to, or they can, sit the HSC and gain that certificate, because after all, 2 years of education is going to be good for them, whether they go into a trade or go into work or whatever. Doesn't mean you have to go to university if you are sitting your HSC. Once again, the difference is the workload. The workload's a lot higher for boys who are doing an ATAR pattern of study, and it's not to scare you or scare the boys sitting here, but it's just what's required, because at the end of the day, that's I guess for you boys who are going to university, Year 12 is a stepping stone, and once you get to university, it'll obviously be a step up. And from our perspective, you'll need to be able to gain the marks or the ranks to get into university, so you do need to work hard. And also, when you're at university, the rigours of the courses at university are going to be quite high as well, so getting into those habits of working hard, you certainly will need that, and that's what's part of doing an ATAR pattern of study or pathway. Just some examples here, and I'll talk you through this because it won't make sense to you unless anyone else here works in a school. But essentially, if we look at these, what we call lines, and English line, maths line, line 3, line 4, line 5 and line 6, you can see there's subjects listed on each of those lines. Now what that means is that essentially students will, in Year 11, do one subject per line, and they must choose a subject from each line. Now, the way those lines are generated is essentially through student choice, and that's another half an hour conversation which I won't bore you with, but essentially the boys decide on what, based on their choices, will decide what falls on each line. Now, each subject essentially is an ATAR subject, or it's a non-ATAR subject, or in some instances it can be either an ATAR or non-ATAR subject. And this example here, the subjects highlighted in red, which you can see just about all of them except 2, are all ATAR subjects. All right, so they're all ATAR subjects. Some of them with the asterisks on them can either be ATAR or non-ATAR, and the only differentiating factor determining whether it's an ATAR or non-ATAR subject is if the boys at the end of Year 12 choose to sit an optional exam. So right now we have boys going through, and say for example they did English studies. Some of the boys chose to sit the exam, and those boys who chose to sit the exam are the boys who wish to gain an ATAR. The boys who are not gaining an ATAR or didn't want an ATAR, they won't sit the English studies exam, and that applies for hospitality, entertainment and building and construction as well. As you can see there, SLR, or Sport, Lifestyle and Recreation, and Work Studies, that's what's referred to as board endorsed subjects. They are non-ATAR, and there is absolutely no option for those to go towards your ATAR or for you to gain an ATAR with those subjects in your pattern unless you're doing 6 subjects. So that's what we call an academic pathway. So if your son wants to do that pathway, he essentially has to choose a red subject from each of those lines there. Now that's just an example. That's not how the subjects will fall whatsoever. That's purely an example we've put up there just to demonstrate what an academic pathway will look like, or an ATAR pathway will look like. No, have we gone off? There, oh geez, it skipped ahead. Sorry guys. Let me just go back. It's a bit sensitive. Okay, so let me just... So this one here is a non-ATAR subject, so you don't get an ATAR. There's no ATAR for the boys in regards to this study if they chose the green subjects there. So as you can see, whilst I said to you previously that English studies can be an ATAR, and that's true, it can go towards your ATAR. If they choose SLR and Work Studies, they are non-ATAR subjects. So I guess the beauty in these change happened a couple of years ago where essentially the boys had a choice between whether or not to sit the HSC exam or not. But now for our students, it's really good in that essentially now they can still do some subjects that will challenge them a little bit, but they're not as hard as those courses, and I guess you could say not as easy as, you know, the SLR and work study type courses. So, and also Mr. Broom will probably talk more about this in regards to vet. They will get sort of credit, they will get certificate 2 in those subjects as well. And there's also TAFE options, which Mr. Broom will touch on as well. So that's if your son chose these subjects here, for example, that is a non-ATAR pathway, and they won't receive an ATAR, but they will definitely receive the HSC. The third option, it's a bit of a hybrid. Like I was saying before, these subjects here that I'm just pointing to now, the green subjects that do not have the asterisks, they can be both ATAR and non-ATAR subjects. So if your son, for example, chose this pathway, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6, they could still get an ATAR. They wouldn't be able to choose SLR on this line, they would have to choose the hospitality vet. And once again, this is just an example to demonstrate this. So essentially they could get to, what that means is they could go along this pattern, take this pattern and get to sort of, you know, September, August of year 12 and make the decision as to whether or not they think they're travelling well enough to sit the HSC exams in terms of how they're applying themselves to their studies. And if they don't want to sit the exam, they notify us and you guys sign the form and we take them out of the HSC exam, but they will still get the higher school certificate. So they have that option of doing ATAR and non-ATAR. So I just want to reiterate that whatever pathway the boys choose, ATAR or non-ATAR, they will still receive their HSC. That's really important, that if you can take away one thing from my talk tonight, ATAR or non-ATAR, boys will still get their HSC, and that if they do the ATAR pattern of study, the rigours are quite high. Now, don't get me wrong, we'll support the boys to the nth. Miss Debman will get up shortly and talk about all the lovely supports that we have in place. So the boys will be well supported, but at the end of the day, they do have to work hard, and it's not us who sits that exam, it's not us who goes home and does the homework and prepares for assessment tasks, it's the boys. So we just want to make it clear that if they are sitting the ATAR pathway, they really have to work hard on that. And just to finish off, the subject selection process is a long process and we start it quite early. So to put a timetable together for the following year, the timetable team have basically started in about March of this year in regards to, you know, the forms in the back end for the online system that we put out. And then at the start of term 2, Mr. Broom and Miss Debman, they will interview each boy to determine what pathway they want to go on. And some boys at that stage will even indicate they want to leave at the end of year 10. And then Mr. Broom will support them in terms of accessing apprenticeships and jobs and work experience and things like that. So, and Mr. Broom will talk about that more. Ultimately, for us as a school, we want to offer the boys as many subjects as we can. And, you know, the more choice they have, the better it is for them. And once again, as it says there, I know that probably won't mean much to you, but essentially the boys' choices drive our timetable. So whatever they choose will go on our timetable, providing there's enough boys to go into that subject. So for example, if we had a subject where only 3 boys chose it, we wouldn't run that subject because only 3 boys have chosen it. However, if we had a subject where 40 boys chose a subject, we would do everything we could, providing we had the staff, to run 2 classes of that subject. So the boys do really drive the timetable. This is really important, and we're happy to make changes for the boys as late as possible in terms of when they start year 11 and also next year for boys in year 10. Getting your son's subjects correct is of the utmost importance, because they've got to come in and day out, lesson in, lesson out, you know, for 2 years and essentially sit subjects, and we want them to be motivated and we want them to be successful. So getting their pathway and pattern right is of the utmost importance. If we put boys in subjects that are too easy and they feel like they're wasting their time and they should have gone an ATAR pathway when they shouldn't, then they're not going to be motivated and they're not going to see what's in it for them at the end. So it's really important that we get their pathway right. On the flip side of that, if we put boys in subjects that are way too hard for them and their patterns too difficult and they have a lot of things going on outside of school like sport and part-time jobs and things like that, once again their motivation's going to wane, and really, you know, teaching and learning in the HSC in the years and the months keep going by, and the boys, once they get behind, they find it really hard to catch up. So getting the pattern right from the first day is really important, and then, you know, the supports that will come from us and obviously yourselves at home as well. But the first thing we need to do is get that pattern right, the pathway right, and that's why we spend so much time and we invest so many resources into you know, things like interviewing each and every individual student, having you guys here tonight and again next year before we do this. So it's really important that we get the pattern right for your boys' success. Like Mr. Grant said, we'll be around at the end if you have any questions. I'll hand you over now to Miss Holder, who's also a Deputy Principal here at the school.
Hi everyone. Most of you know me. I'm Kath Holder. I'm the deputy that looks after Year 9. I also happen to be a mother that's got a son going through the HSC right now. So I'm kind of where you're going to be in 3 years. And I am, stressed. And I'm quite looking forward to him being done. So we are 2 exams down. We have 5 to go. I've been watching his journey and I've been thinking about this process and how we approached this process at home. My experience as a young person was that my mother chose my subjects for me, and that didn't go very well because I ended up doing subjects that didn't suit me. We tried very hard to listen to our son's voice and listen to all of his teachers and take the advice that we were given. I think in some ways that we kind of didn't listen to him enough about a couple of his subjects, because there's one where he wanted to work harder and one where it's his nemesis subject and he feels that he's probably gone a bit higher than he should have. And so the result of that is that he's done lots and lots and lots and lots of work in that subject, treading water to try and be successful because it's important to him, because it has to count. And at the same time, if I'd let him be a level below, instead of pushing him because I thought he was smart enough, he probably would have had more time for his other subjects. But I just have to take that on board now as his mother, and that's just the way it is. So I'm talking here about whether your son has to complete Year 10, because for some kids, completing Year 10 is not a pathway that works for them. For lots of kids, it's the right pathway, but for some kids, it's not. And I'm going to come over here in the light because it might mean that I can be seen on the video. It might mean more to people. So right now, actually this week, we've got a group of 11 boys who actually applied to Brookvale TAFE. Now, there's a lady down at Brookvale TAFE who is fantastic. She runs a course which is the Year 10 equivalent. We're not pushing kids to go to this course, but for kids who don't love school, and let's face it, the reality is that some kids do not love school, they hate it, and being at school is a nightmare. So for these kids, it means that one day a week, Tina is offering a course for them to do the Year 10 equivalent. The course she's running is giving them the basics in 3 subjects: science, maths and English. They've got a minimum amount of work they have to complete. It's self-directed. They're down there one day a week this term, and if they perform, if they work really well, she'll invite them next year to come 3 days a week. The carrot that they love is that the other 2 days a week, they can work or do work experience or work with an employer that they want to get an apprenticeship with. So in a sense, they're kind of building for their future trade. So for those kids that want to get a trade and school is a nightmare and they're disengaged, this is a great option. I will say this has worked really well for some very, very disengaged boys that we had. They would have been now in our Year 11 group. These boys have all got trades now and they're hugely successful. They're driving past me in nice cars. They're happy. They're not in trouble. They're not outside my office, which is where many of them were spending time. Or they're not having their parents called because they weren't doing their work all the time. And they're doing really well. So really, at the end of the day, the big thing that we want for every boy that comes through our school, we want them to be happy and successful when they walk out the door and to have something that's worth something. Because the reality is that having an HSC is not the be-all and end-all for every kid. Having a successful life and being happy is the be-all and end-all. And we want them to have choices about that. And you don't have to get an HSC to be successful and happy. And that's the message. So what we're doing is we're trying to find the right pathway for everybody. So there are also, St Leonard's TAFE offers one of these courses. It's more structured than the course at Brookvale. So the one at Brookvale is very much self-directed. It's very much supported. But the one at St Leonard's is a bit more rigorous and very difficult to get into. They only offer us 2 places. The one at Brookvale, well, she's taken 11. She loves our boys, and I've already had an email telling me how wonderful they are. So it's all going well. Happy, happy. And there are also things offered at both Northern Beaches and Petersham TAFEs, but they're a bit further away and a bit more difficult to get to. There's also the option of an apprenticeship or traineeship. We have had some kids actually take up an apprenticeship early on in Year 10 for those kids that are interested. So there are all different pathways to success, and that's why this is a senior pathways meeting this evening, because there's all different ways to get to where you want to. Thank you. Without the thing. I'll hand over to Mr. Bovian.
Hi everybody, my name's Tarlina Bovian and I am the head teacher of English. I'm here just to outline the different courses that we offer in years 11 and 12, just as a way for you to understand when your boys are coming home from school and talking about their English work and you're hearing them speak about the subject in a particular way. It might give you a little bit of guidance in terms of the suitability of course for them. We do see Year 10 as very much a transitioning year into Year 11 and 12, and we do build a lot of foundational skills in Year 10, so it's really important for the boys to understand that if they do want to strive for an advanced course in Year 11 and then into 12, that they need to be applying themselves quite rigorously to the demands of the Year 10 course that we are offering for them in the top Year 10 class, for example. So English is a mandatory subject, and it's not everyone's favourite subject, sadly, but it's mandatory, so we want to make sure that the boys are slotting into the right subject or right course for them. The levels for Year 11 are determined based on how they perform in Year 10, and we do take assessment results as well as the boys' level of application and take into consideration any, for example, if there was extended illness or if extended breaks or etc., we take that into consideration. So if your son is a high-performing student and they did have a bout of illness, for example, rest assured we do take that into consideration, but we just want to make sure that they're heading into the right direction. We are committed to making the experiences as enjoyable as possible. We are very passionate English teachers, and we love the fact that we get to spend time with the boys teaching them how to read, write and build their comprehension skills. But it's important to note that when they are in Year 10 and if they have the aspiration to do the higher levels of English in Year 11 and 12, that they apply themselves diligently, because we can move them up and down in Year 10, but once they choose their courses in Year 11 and 12, they can only move down courses, they can't move up. So for example, if they chose standard in Year 11 and decided by midway through, oh actually, you know, I think I want to give advanced English a crack, which is a level up, they can't actually do that because they wouldn't have met the prerequisites for it. So it's really important to know where, or have some sort of idea where they're headed. As their teachers, we know them really, really well. We spend a lot of time with them in a mandatory subject. So we have some excellent teachers who know your sons very well, and we'll be able to assist and help you with that as well. No, did I go too far? Sorry. Okay. So just as a sort of like an indication in terms of marks, all of our English subjects are ATAR courses, except for English studies, which the boys can opt out of their HSC exam and use it as a non-ATAR pathway, which Mr. Horrow went through. So our advanced students, we're looking for a 75 to 100% average for their assessment task marks. So they're our high achieving students and those who are most successful and find English very enjoyable and want to extend and expand on their skills. For our English standard students, we have more classes usually of the English standard course. It's a 60 to 75% average for their assessment task because it is quite a demanding course. Sometimes when we talk about English standard, the name can sometimes throw students and they feel that it's quite easy, but in and of itself it's quite rigorous as a course and quite a bit is involved. And then we have English studies, so that's for students who are sort of achieving at the lower end or have sort of an aspiration to do a trade or, you know, are finding the subject quite difficult in year 10, then English studies might be the one that's suitable for them. What I've got on the following slides are are indications of and sort of outlines in terms of what we're looking for in English. So for example, we sort of look at concepts and ideas and we explore them through the texts that we're studying. For example, if your son is coming home and talking about how they're really struggling to understand the ideas at a really deep level. So for example, they only understand the literal meaning of a text, or if you find that they become quite overwhelmed when it comes to assessment tasks and their homework or their expression and their ability to write and speak about text at quite a basic level. Or if when it comes to doing their homework or tasks for English, they sort of just want to get it done very, very quickly and get it out of the way, that might be a student who is more suited to English studies based on the skill set that they've already developed in their junior years. For our standard students, these are students who understand the literal and conceptual or metaphorical meaning behind ideas. They do still need some guidance, and we do absolutely help and scaffold things for students in standard, definitely, and they're looking to improve their skills, okay? They participate in class discussions, but they do need that guidance from their teacher to prompt them to perhaps question how they might consider different ideas as well. Our advanced students, we still absolutely do still teach and support them, but these are students who already have a really strong understanding, can interpret text on their own. They can go ahead and draw out their own ideas from text, for example. Their written expression is already at quite a high level and they're seeking to really build their confidence and can engage in class discussions quite readily on their own. When it comes to an example for, if I could use, say, we teach Romeo and Juliet to Year 9, we're teaching it at the moment. If we were to look at the concept of hatred in Romeo and Juliet, an English studies student may say, I understand that Shakespeare writes about hatred and I can see that that's relevant because the characters fight one another. It's quite literal. An English standard student might say, hatred is an important idea that Shakespeare explores and it has a real impact on the characters who are trying to fall in love with each other. So they go up in terms of they can sort of discuss it at a higher level, a conceptual level. Our English advanced students will be able to understand that hatred is not only an important idea, but that Shakespeare actually implements and incorporates it in order to warn his audiences of the political context that was happening during the Elizabethan period. They can take something that they understand that is literally happening in the play and can expand it out to what it means for the characters, what it means for the world that they are living in, and also what the composer's purpose was behind that. So those are sort of the different levels that you might want to consider. We also look at techniques. So if your son has ever come home worried about an English exam and they say, I have to learn all of my quotes and I have to know my techniques. Techniques are very important and quotes are very important because our boys need to be able to support themselves and support their ideas with references to the text. An English studies student might find it really difficult to understand techniques. They might have heard the word metaphor before and simile before, but they find it really difficult to understand what the purpose is behind it. They might really rely on their teacher's notes from the board to get them through each lesson and understand what's happening in class. Our English standard students will know what a metaphor and a simile are, for example. Those sorts of techniques that they use all the time, okay? They can understand the techniques offer a deeper meaning behind a text. They understand the function behind them, but they might need a lot of help in terms of understanding what that particular function is, and they need that guidance. Our advanced students will be able to know what our foundational techniques are, our familiar ones like metaphors, personification, similes, but they'll also know the more sophisticated and complicated ones like pathetic fallacy and symbolism, for example. They appreciate that there's a depth of meaning behind techniques and can actually identify some of those meanings on their own without that extra guidance, and are ready and prepared to be able to discuss that and experiment with that in their writing. Again, if I was going to take an example from Romeo and Juliet, a very popular line from Romeo and Juliet is when Romeo is standing underneath Juliet's balcony and he says, "Juliet is the sun." An English studies student may not understand. They'll understand, for example, that Juliet's not actually the sun, but they won't understand why he's calling her the sun. A standard student will understand that the metaphor that Romeo calls Juliet the sun, it means that he thinks she's quite striking and he's quite taken aback by her. An advanced student will be able to go further than that and talk about the immediate attachment and devotion that nature of being struck by her beauty means, and will also be able to make a comment about how Shakespeare warns his audiences about how dangerous such a quick devotion, how dangerous it can be and what that might mean for them. Okay, so they're able to draw in context, they're able to draw in purpose, and can go further. Okay, when it comes to structuring their writing, why me? Well, there we go. When it comes to structure, an English studies student might really struggle to structure their writing into particular paragraphs. They might struggle with sentence structure. You might have a lot of run-on sentences where there's not a lot of use of punctuation correctly, and they might find it really hard to go beyond just talking about the literal plot recount of texts and things like that. Our English standard students, we've been teaching a structure for paragraph writing called Tupil, and all our boys are very familiar with Tupil. An English standard student will be able to use Tupil on their own, and they'll feel quite confident with that. However, when it comes to writing more conceptual arguments, they would need a lot more help with that. They can edit their own responses, but do rely on that feedback and help to be able to correct their writing. Our English advanced students are excellent writers. They already know how to structure their responses, and in fact, they are able to go beyond that very strict Tupil structure and present more of a personal understanding of their ideas. They're able to integrate evidence and make contextual links, so why the text matters to our world and who we are within it, which is very important in terms of them achieving those top bands in year 11 or in year 12. And finally, when we talk about working in English, we talk about boys' ability to work independently. We always do a lot of group work, we always work in classes with the boys, but when it comes to working independently in year 11 and 12, that's something that's quite important in the courses that they're studying, not just for English, but for everybody. If your son struggles to work independently and finds that they become quite disengaged in English, and if they find that they really don't want to put in a lot of work and they find it really difficult and can be quite stressed by it, then perhaps English studies is the way for them. In English standards, students can work independently and do come home to complete their homework. They enjoy writing, predominantly we find our standard students really enjoy creative writing, for example, and they are prepared to commit to that regular independent study. And our advanced students, again, go further. They already have a really strong foundation of skills. They work independently and go beyond just what is covered in class or the homework that we provide them. They do extra reading, further reading and research, and are really striving for those top marks. So I'm hoping that that's really helpful. If you ever have any questions, our faculty is very, very passionate about not only our students but our subjects. So please, if there's anyone that you would like to talk to or contact us in any way, please don't hesitate to do so. Thank you. I think I'm handing over to Miss Karanaka for maths. Hey, it worked for you perfectly. It will.
Hi, my name is Ruth Karanaka and I'm the head teacher of maths here. So the main thing that I wanted to share in maths was that the syllabus changed this year. So if you had an older son who did the stage 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 course, that's completely gone now. And now the new course has something called a core and a core plus parts. I'll explain to you in the next slide how that works at Ask with Boys, okay? So that's the main thing that's happened at this point. So the year 11 classes are usually based, and that's been the theme so far, isn't it? Is usually based on the 9-10 classes. We try to get the 9-10 classes right in maths, and then we hope that we can just transfer the boys to the right course in year 11. And just as Ms. Abovian was talking about it, the main thing for us is to get the boys in the right class. Is there a noise coming? Is that okay? Come closer. Is that better? And so the main thing is to get the right boys in the right class. That's our commitment, because we feel if we get them right, then the class culture is really nice. You know, the right boys are in the right class, working the right course. So much easier for the staff, and the kids love it. And then another thing to note again, as Ms. Abovian was saying, in 9 and 10, we are happy to move the boys this way or that way. And then in 11 and 12, they can only move down. They can't move up. Just like how, you know, if you're in standard, you can't suddenly decide next term, I want to go and try advanced. It won't work. Okay, let's see how this works now. Closer, closer. Got it. I'll be quick on this. The stage 4 is the year 7 and 8, and that's the same thing for everyone. And then when you go into stage 5, which is 9 and 10, so if you can see the one right on this end, it's 9, 10 Maths 1. So if your son is in 9 Maths 1, what happens is when he goes to year 11, he's got a choice of doing Maths Standard 2, or he can do advanced and extension if he wants to. Okay, so that's for the kids in 9-10 in 9-1. And when he goes to year 12, he's again got the choice of doing standard 2, advanced, extension 1, and extension 2. If he wants to, he can pick it up. Currently, we have 6 boys doing extension 2, which is fantastic, you know. If your son is in 9-10, 2-3, that's 9 Maths 2 or 3, they're doing what we call the core. So the first ones are doing core plus parts. Here they're doing just the core. And those boys predominantly go into Maths Standard 2. Okay? Maths Standard 2 is again a 2-unit course, so they will go straight into that. And then when they come to year 12, they'll do the Maths Standard 2 course in year 12. Yeah? If your son is in year 4-5, in 9 Maths 4-5, then they would go into the Maths Standard. It's all called standard in year 11, but in year 12 would pick up Maths Standard 1, and then he can choose either if he wants to go to an ATAR, he can do the exam and go to an ATAR, or he can choose the non-ATAR, which means he would just won't do the exam. Yeah? So that's where the maths thing stands. We find that in the last couple of years, we've managed to get the right boys there. There's been a little bit. Sometimes the boys in 9 Maths 2 would want to try to do advanced. We are happy to help them. We are happy to train them and do a little exam at the end. And then if they're good, we're happy to take them into advanced. So anything is flexible in 9 and 10. But then, you know, it's really hard to move. Yeah? That's pretty much with maths. If you have any questions, please feel free to come and talk to me after, and I'm more than happy to help you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Susie Dedman. I'm the head teacher, teaching and engagement. So my role really in the school is to actually run all of this and coordinate all of this, and to make sure we've got kids all in the right courses, and then to support them as best that we can. So I run all the support for all the senior students, and there's a lot of support available. There's a lot of support available for juniors as well. But we've got lots of things in place, but as everybody's spoken about, it is really super important to be on the right pathway. And just to give you a sort of example, back from what Ruth was talking about, you know, we might have 28 kids in 10 Maths 1, and then we now have 13, I think, left in advanced. So we started with more than that, and more kids that thought that maybe they could do it, and then it drops away. So the idea that even if you are in 10 Maths 1, it will not necessarily mean that you will do well in 11 advanced maths. And she's right, we've got 6 wonderful boys, and you saw 2 of them before, Oscar and Ben, who were helping with the projection and videoing today, and they're both doing Extension 2 Maths, and they're also doing entertainment, which is a vet subject, hence why they're running all our projections and everything like that. So, you know, there's a huge amount of pathways for boys available, but what you will find is just because you're in 9-1 now, and even if you go into 10-1 next year, it doesn't mean advanced English and advanced maths will necessarily be the right choice for you. So you do need to talk to your teacher as well, and it is better to start in the right course. Like, it is better to start in the right course than to start in the wrong course and then have to drop out, because that's not good for anyone's confidence. So yeah, what we do is we have a process where me and Chris Broom, we sit with every single student and we interview them. So we sit with them and we talk about what they want to do post-school, and then what they enjoy, with, you know, what sort of subjects they enjoy, what they're thinking about, and then we try to put them on the right pathway, the right course. So whether that's ATAR or non-ATAR, or like we said, if they're ready to leave. So if we've got kids that want to leave, Chris works very, very closely with them to ensure that we don't have kids leaving to nothing. So we want the kids to leave to actually something. So lots of kids have got apprenticeships, and some of them got them in year 10 and they started in year 11. Some of them started in year 10, and we've had kids that have left even throughout year 11 who indicated that's what they wanted to do, and then it's just been waiting for them to get that apprenticeship. So all of that happens, and we're all there to support them. We don't want the kids to leave just to leave. We want them to leave for something, and for something that's going to be beneficial for them. It's really important to remember that you can't just turn on learning. Like, you can't just turn up in year 11 and go, oh, well, I'm going to try now, and then somehow expect everything to just happen, because it's actually the culmination of everything. So we get to take credit for like the good results that the kids get, but it's actually all the teachers all the way back from kindergarten, and everything that's been done at home from parents and every tutor and all the people that have been involved with the kids through all of those years that actually come out in the HSC, you know, so it's all of it. So we don't, when you sort of have those kids, and you may have sons at home and they might say, oh yeah, but I'm going to start trying next year or whatever, but really, like, it's everything that's come before it that matters too, that makes it whether they're going to be successful or not. And the reason we want to run this early as well is because we like to say, if that's the attitude from the kids, then you now need to show us. You need to show us for the rest of this year, and you need to show us for all of next year, you know, to kickstart it. You can't just show up in year 11 and go, okay, I'm going to try now. And yes, if having a really aspirational goal, that's fantastic. But there's lots of different ways to meet those pathways. And we would be wrong to try to send people on a pathway which, through all our collective experience, which is hundreds of years if you add all of us up, we know is going to be a failure. And we do have these kids every single year, and it breaks our heart, but it does. We have these conversations with parents and kids, and we advise them of the correct pathway, and then they don't choose it, and it all falls apart. And we don't want to have to end determine kids out of courses, but we're also bound by NESA guidelines if they're not meeting the requirements of the course. And we certainly don't want kids to just drop out and become disengaged and then really have nothing to go to. And we don't want kids ending up with an HSC that they did, which really has no skills, and their ATAR's very low, so it's no opportunity to use that, and they've just experienced 2 years of like consistent failure. So we don't want that. So we really, when we suggest something, we are suggesting in the best interests of the kids. And every single one of those kids that dropped from advanced maths to standard, we did recommend that they started in standard. So, you know, we don't like to say, I told you so. We would actually prefer if they just listened to us in the first place and didn't have to go through that very painful journey of actually failing consistently and then going, oh, okay, I'm in the wrong course. So we are doing this with everyone's best interests at heart. Here we go. So, there is so much support available. So I am in homework club every Tuesday and Thursday lunch in the library, and every Tuesday afternoon after school. It's myself, Mr. Hockley, and it's also SLSOs. Now, a lot of the SLSOs that I have working for me are former students. I have the student that was Dux of the school and second last year, so I've got loads of knowledge there, like, you know, across all subject areas. You know, I've taught maths, English and a whole bunch of HISI subjects, and I've got loads of people to help with science and other subjects as well. So we are there every Tuesday afternoon from 2:30 onwards. So we pick Tuesdays because that's a good day, because they finish early anyway, so why not come do half an hour of homework. And like I said, we're also there Tuesday, Thursday lunch. When kids get into year 11 and 12, we run study hall during sport, and I am there in study hall to support the kids as well. But we run lots and lots of programs. So towards the back end of last term for year 12, we ran lots of study specific sessions for different subjects, and we get people in and we provide different materials, and, you know, so all these things are happening to support the kids. And also maths assistance. There's always, actually, there's maths assistance every lunchtime from one teacher or another, but there's at least, if you, Miss Laffer does that 3 times a week, but Miss Kay also assists kids at lunchtime for maths as well. So there's a lot going on in terms of help available. The kids have to be willing to take the support, but it's all there. And also in year 9 and 10, there's a lot of support in class for kids as well. So there's extra people in class helping. So that's another way kids can access support. All right, we'll just go for a wander. Here we go. Oh God, now how do we go backwards? Right. Oh, I've gone the wrong way. Oh, it's all failed. I don't know. Oh, it's been a long day already. What's going on? Thanks, Bryce. Thank you.
You're in trouble when
Okay. I just wanted to talk a bit about the ATAR because it is like a very, very misunderstood thing. So the ATAR is actually a ranking. So basically, if you take every kid from every single kid in the state in year 12 and you rank them from, I guess, 0. I mean, they don't publish those results for the 0, like under 20, but you know, if from 0 to 100, that's actually what the ATAR is. So if you get an ATAR of 80, it means that based on the way the university does the calculations, you've done better than 80% of students. But remember, there's a lot of mathematical algorithms within that calculation, because it's like some subjects will scale slightly higher than other subjects, and so it's like a weighting that's pushed on different things. But basically, this is the way it's calculated. So basically, if an average ATAR, so that means you're better than 50% of students, and then I guess if you want to look glass half empty, you're worse than 50% of students, but like you're just right in the middle. You know, that's probably, that's your ranking, but your mark, because the marks are worked out differently, the average mark for a lot of subjects in the HSC is 70. So you get like all 70s in your subjects, and your ATAR, depending on what subjects you've done, will be about 50-ish. So we can have a look, because I put it through. Oh, what's going on? I'm just going over here. No, it doesn't matter. I've missed the graph. I've moved on. So this is so let's just say you pick an ATAR pathway. You do PDH, English, Maths Standard 2, Business Studies, Biology. You get 70 in everything. That's your ATAR. So the reality is that 70 is not actually a great mark. I mean, it's an average mark, it's okay. So you really got to be getting like, once you get over 75, the picture gets a little bit brighter, but it's really when you get over 85, the picture gets a lot brighter. So it's just something I just want you to remember as well, that the way that it's all calculated, you really to get an ATAR above 70, it means you need to be in the top 30% of students. So reality suggests that if you're not in the top 30% of students here at Asquith, then you're probably not likely to be in the top 30% of students in the state. And so therefore, when you come out with an ATAR, it's probably going to be lower than what most courses want. Can you still go to uni with a low ATAR? Yes. But studies show that kids that go to university straight from high school with ATARs under 70, after 10 years, about 70% of them have not completed the course. So that's a lot of HECS debt to rack up for nothing. But studies show that if you go to TAFE out of school and then transfer from TAFE to university, you've actually got an 80% chance of finishing within that 10-year period. So for some students, it's maturity, it's just the actual experience of going to TAFE and being in that adult world and actually experience success in studying that maybe in a different environment that helps them with that pathway. So my suggestion to kids that are not in that top 30% is to choose a non-ATAR pathway here, to get lots of skills. We offer 3 vet courses here, entertainment's one of them, and you saw the wonderful work the boys did before, so they've obviously learned a lot more than any of us all put together. And we rely very heavily on them, and Oscar has fixed my technology on many occasions. So they're doing entertainment here at school, we do construction here at school, and we do hospitality here at school. All of those kids come out with Cert 2s and they come out with industry experience because they go for work placements in those industries. And obviously they do things like this. We have it all set up in the school, so they've actually got lots and lots of industry experience. So they're walking away with actual skills. Now, what they can then do after school is go, right, I really enjoyed doing that. I'm going to go do some further study at TAFE, and then from that may lead them into that university pathway. And that is a much more likely pathway to be successful than coming out with this ATAR, getting into whatever uni will accept you, paying a lot of money, and it is a lot of money these days, and then really your chances of succeeding are quite low. So we would prefer them to go on that pathway. And we prefer them to do that because we understand the realities and what the evidence is showing us about the likelihood of success. And the thing is that university has gotten very, very, very expensive, and the payoff for a lot of the courses, especially the very general courses like business, is really not there. So a lot of people are finding now, and I know Chris spoke to people at universities that are finding if you're not getting additional qualifications like masters, or if you're not doing additional things, that really your business degree is not very valued because there's so many people out there with one. So unless you're doing those specific degrees like teaching, that's still, you know, we need teachers, by the way, anyone's interested. You know, so there's stuff like that which, like, obviously, you know, is going to lead straight into jobs. But we also encourage kids to speak to Mr. Broom about what pathways are out there, because there's some jobs that are becoming more and more redundant, and then there's some jobs which are really growing and they're really looking for. There's also heaps of university courses which are being subsidised by the government because they're areas of high need. So therefore you're going to get a much lower HECS debt, and you know you're going into a course where the government needs you. So all of these things and all of this information is available through Mr. Broom, who is a wealth of knowledge about all of that. And he is now up.
Thank you.
You can be more successful than me, maybe.
Across. I've decided next year, before this, we're going to get Oscar to help give us all a lesson on one of these, and also to put an arrow on the ground where he wants us to stand. So I'll be right here. I'm short, so I won't block the screen. Thank you for everyone for coming tonight, and everyone at home obviously watching. I'm Mr. Broom. I'm the careers advisor. I'm also the head teacher welfare, so I'll talk about some welfare stuff at the end. But just to reiterate what everyone's talked about tonight is obviously choosing the right pathway and the reasons behind that. We will give you a lot more information next year in Year 10, just to clarify everything. Boys, I can see a few confused faces before about all of this and the ATAR and everything. this will all be repeated in year 10. However, you'll have this background knowledge which will make it a lot more clear and give you a lot more clarity next year when we have these discussions. So Miss Debon and I do meet with you at the beginning of term 2. We have interviews with every single student. We've found that that process, which is a relatively new one, has been really successful. It gives students a really good, almost a kick in the backside to really think about their pathways and their future, because that process starts and you have to pick subjects, and all of a sudden they're deciding what they're wanting to do after school at the start of year 10. So you've got that little bit of a head start compared to previous years where we haven't had this information on. What I want to talk about is what year 9s will be doing next year in regards to future planning and careers. So we have year 10 careers lessons once a fortnight. So they're scheduled lessons on your timetable every fortnight, where most of the time it'll be myself, sometimes it is another teacher, delivering careers education. So we go through basically career planning. We look at what jobs are, why people work. We look at the labour market data. We look at work experience options and virtual work experiences. We help with resume writing. We look into starting entrepreneurship and business planning, which some boys take on board and actually do while they're at school. And there's a lot of different things we do. So that happens once a fortnight for the whole year throughout year 10. Part of that process is the subject selection process that we do in year 10. So I start that in careers lessons. I actually work with students to backwards map, basically trying to look at the different areas that they are interested in for a career and work backwards. Well, what are the jobs in those career options, or what are the jobs in those industries? What do you need to get those jobs? Do you need a uni degree? Do you need a TAFE degree? Do you need to join the ADF? Do you need other experience on top of all of that? Do you even need an HSC, as Ms Holder said? Can you do it straight from year 10? Do you even need year 10? Can you start that throughout year 10 and do a joint thing that some of these boys do that go to Brookvale have already? So they're all the things we discuss and try and plan out before we even have the meetings with Miss Debon and myself. Before then we pick the subjects, because I think that process is very valuable, and we're lucky to do that here and have these lessons, because a lot of schools don't have set lessons for year 10s. I'm also available on top of those lessons for every student in the school to come and see. So any student can come and see me at any time to discuss all of those things as well. One thing I know Ms Debon did touch on about the ever-changing career aspects is research that came out last year actually showed that this generation may work up to 18 different jobs across 6 careers in their lifetime, which just again reinforces the fact that lifelong learning will definitely be a skill of the future. Anything you learn, whether you think it's relevant or not, can be a lifelong lesson. Skills need to be transferable, whether it's TAFE, uni, school, whether it's PE, maths, science, English, any other area. We talk as teachers about what you're doing in the subject, how that can link to the real world, and those skills, how they can link to things. And I think it doesn't matter which pathway you choose, whatever you do, whatever pathway you take, those skills will be valuable for the future, and you can use them in other ways. I'm going to try my luck here. Nope. Yep. Work experience. Now that's something I cannot stress enough, the importance of doing work experience. I would suggest even throughout the end of term 4 this year for year 9. It is a set program for year 10. I go through this information during our careers lessons. I hand out information books and go through the whole process with year 10 students so they're aware of what to expect for work experience. Basically, it gives the students a really good indication of whether that's an industry that they want to be involved in the future. A lot of the time students pick an industry based on what their parents do, or just based on contacts they have, not necessarily what they want to do in the future. So it's really advisable to do this as part of the future planning process. Think about an industry or an area that you want to get into. Work with me to look at the jobs available. I've got some really good resources to help with that as well. And then go out and try more than one lot of work experiences. So most of the boys who do transition out of here successfully, whether it's into university, whether it's into TAFE, whether it's before they even finish year 10, already have done work experience and have a pathway planned out. Nearly every student who goes and leaves here for a trade apprenticeship has definitely come to see me and set up work experience to make sure that that's the right industry for them. Some of them have tried multiple trades to work out which one they want to do. Some boys have gone out and had bad experiences and gone, oh, I really thought that's what I want to do, and now I really know that that's not for me. It's hard. School might be the best option, or I need to reassess my career aspirations. So no matter what, it's a positive experience. Whether you get a positive experience out of it for the week or positive for your future, it's really valuable. Those are just some pictures that are in the book that I hand out of students who have done it in the past, who have all been very successful, and a couple of them actually have done, and I'll talk about this in a moment, school-based apprenticeships, which is an option for you guys as well, which you can actually start in year 10. You don't have to wait till year 11 and 12 to do that. And those boys have gone out successfully in I think all of them in trades. Yes, they are. And Daniel in the bottom right has just finished year 12 now. He was on a non-ATAR pathway. He did a school-based apprenticeship in carpentry. So he was out working 1 day a week with an employer, going to TAFE 1 day, 3 days here. He's already finished his first year of his apprenticeship. So he's leaving here with year 12, not having to sit any HSC exams. He's got an HSC. He's already in his second year of his carpentry apprenticeship, and I believe he also picked another subject which I think he's got a Cert 2 from as well. Come on. Oh. Too much. That's very sensitive. Sorry, everyone. It's been kind to me now. I can go back to it. So there's a lot of info there, and I apologise for that. I'll talk about most of it. So we have a very strong history of offering vet subjects here at school. I know it's been mentioned before. We have what we call school-based vocational education training. 3 subjects here: entertainment, hospitality and construction. They are all Certificate 2 qualifications that the students will get. As mentioned by Mr. Horrow, Mr. Deadman, those subjects are optional ATAR and non-ATAR, so students, no matter which pathway they're aiming for, can pick them and end up with potentially an HSC, an ATAR and 3 Certificate 2 vet qualifications out of it. Now what that looks like, what it is, it's a certificate. It actually has a Certificate 2. It lists all the competencies achieved in that certificate, and for most cases that can take off time if they pursue that as a career. If they go on, for instance, carpentry or construction that we run at school, and they go and do a carpentry apprenticeship, that can take up to 6 months off their apprenticeship, their TAFE side of their apprenticeship. Now that's slightly different depending on the course. I know electrotechnology at TAFE has moved it back, and I think it's only 3 months off the course, but it's still a qualification and it's still time off having to do it if they pursue that career. Vet courses can be bridging courses for further study. Now I've got a slide. The next slide will actually show you different pathways that Ms. Deadman talked about. So the TAFE options into university or straight from school to university and what they look like. So I'll show you an image of that after this. Currently, I've said we offer 3 SVET courses. I had a look through our roles. At the moment this year, we had over 100 students in total across those 3 subjects, those 3 courses this year. So in our senior courses, we had over 100 students on the rolls for those subjects, which show you probably half of the students here are doing vet courses in school. On top of that, this year we had 31 students going out attending TAFE in person, doing what we call TVET, which is TAFE Delivered Vet Education Training. And that process happens through me in year 10. It starts at the same time we do all the subject selection and we do applications. A lot of people think TAFE is just trade. That's just one area of the vocational education training. There are thousands of different courses available for students. And one of the students, or 2 of the students sitting up there, actually, or one of them are doing TAFE right now. So we have them in multiple areas. There's IDT, there's real estate, there is business services, there is obviously all the trade-based ones, there is beauty, makeup, real estate, entertainment. There's all sorts of different things that students can do as part of their HSC without actually having to do the subject here at school. So the subjects we offer are what we have at school, and then we have additional TAFE applications as well that students can do. 7 of them also do it through Launchpad. sorry, on top of that 31, we have another 7 that are doing TAFE digitally. So those students sit in the library on their set TAFE allocated time, and they're actually studying online with a class and a teacher getting that education. We have 6 students doing SBAT. So Daniel, who I just showed you before, was one of them, but we have another 5 this year that are currently doing school-based apprenticeships and traineeships. And 2 of them actually are on an ATAR pathway. Now, that's not generally recommended for students doing school-based apprenticeships or traineeships, because as Daniel's example that I gave before, he's out 2 days a week and he's only at school 3 days. So for that type of industry, for a trade-based school-based apprenticeship, it's highly, highly, highly not recommended to do it as an ATAR pathway, because you're missing too much school. You physically cannot catch up. You're missing that face-to-face valuable learning from your teacher. The exceptions are some of the courses that are available outside of school time, such as retail services. So working at McDonald's, KFC, Domino's. If any student, any Year 9 boy is currently working one of those places and you'd like to do an SBAT, basically they put you on a part-time contract, you get paid to study, and it counts towards your HSC. And you can choose whether you want to drop a subject back here or not for it. So that's an option for you as well. Important to note though, and I know we've talked about the ATAR pattern, non-ATAR, or the combination. Ms Dedman did mention it before. If you pick a vet subject, generally you do have to go out for industry-based work experience or work placement, which is so valuable, but it also means a week away from school. Now that's in year 11 and then another week in year 12. So if you're choosing a pathway here where you might do entertainment, construction, hospitality, and then you pick up a TAFE course and you're doing real estate, you're out for 4 weeks in year 11 and you're out for 4 weeks in year 12. So it's again, you've got to weigh up whether you can catch up the work, especially if you're looking at an ATAR pathway, and really weigh up those things. Whether you're a student who can cope with that demand of being away for so long and be able to catch up with work and make sure you're seeing your teachers throughout that time. So they're part of the discussions that Ms Dedman and I have through that process. I'm worried. Okay, so this is the Basic and Education Training Employment Pathways map. So at the moment, your sons and the boys in here are in year 9. Ms Holder talked about the options of leaving in year 10 or before year 10. So if you follow that across about what your options are, most of the time it starts as a TAFE option. So most of the time you can leave, you can start an apprenticeship towards the end of year 10 or when you leave year 10, or a traineeship. And then from that, it doesn't mean you can't go to uni down the track. You can enhance your education through TAFE or other RTOs, and you can go and get a diploma or an advanced diploma, and then based on that, generally you can go into university if that's your pathway option. And going back to what Ms Dedman said about the success rate of students who end up following that pathway, most of the time it's because of motivation. They've gone out, they've got experience, they've gone out, they've been working, they've decided, I know what I want to do now, and their motivation to what they want to do is much higher, rather than going into a university course unknowing what they want to do after it, and that's where sometimes they fall off the radar. So the options though are very broad. I have had students that have left in year 11 to go and do a Cert 3 in courses like nursing, to then get into Diploma of Nursing, to then transfer across to go into registered nursing at university or a Bachelor of Nursing. I've mapped it out and worked out, okay, is that going to get them into being a registered nurse before, if they got into university and did a 4-year degree, and basically they're about 6 months earlier in getting into nursing. And that was without getting an HSC. So there are a lot of options. HSC is really good and relevant, and it gives you a certificate, and a lot of employers, especially employers who aren't familiar with the new processes of schooling, want to see that HSC. But at the end of the day, it's not the be-all and end-all. There are a lot of pathways to get there, as you can see. However, if you're someone who's highly motivated, you want to go to university, we'll definitely work with you to support you. And on that note, it's just one thing that's important that a lot of students miss when they get to year 11 and 12 is if you're a highly academic student and you are looking at some really high level degrees such as medicine, so dentistry and medicine, there are other things you have to do on top of just getting the good ATAR. And you need to see me to discuss those options such as UCATs and other planning and tuition and prep for those things. So it's not just a matter of doing well here, you also have to do other tests, you have to study for other things on top of that. Just the last slide for me, putting my welfare hat. The importance of getting this right is that basically if we have students that are doing subjects outside of their ability and their range, which I know every single person here has talked about, the consequences of that lead to a lot of welfare issues. We see it, we deal with it every year. So end warning letters, students with elevated anxiety and stress, even study stress on not knowing how to manage their study, even though we provide all the support we can, they just black out because there's too much information because they're not at that level. The decreased motivation to even learn because it's all too much, and obviously decreased school attendance as a result, which then impacts their learning negatively. So I know we've repeated ourselves a lot across the board with all the people here, but the message is clear, is we've got a lot of knowledge here, we're here to support you, and you need to listen to our advice, and we will work with you and your parents the best we can to make the right decisions for you. As Mr. Grant said, we won't always get it perfect, but we'll do our best. I think is finished with Mr. Timmins or Mr. Grant? Thank you, everyone. I'm going to give you this.
I don't know if I need it, this is the last one. Yes, so importantly in RAP, Year 9 subjects, the results in the yearly exams that you get will shape what subjects you go into level-wise with Year 10, and that will ultimately shape the subjects that we're looking at you springboarding into in Year 11 and 12. There's no incorrect pathway, there is an incorrect pathway, but we will, as you've heard from everyone here, there's lots of correct pathways that will work very, very hard with your sons to make sure we can put that map in place for them. Year 10 reports will include marks. We're not allowed to include marks on reports up until Year 10. So along the journey, lots of all your sons would have achieved A's, B's, C's and D's. If you can imagine, an A is 90 to 100, a B is 70 to 90 and a C is 30 to 70. Now, if you're getting a C, you might think, oh, my son's doing really well, but it could be 31%. It also could be 69%. So look, it's just something to be conscious of. All right, while I don't want you, scared, so to speak, or caught off guard, what I'm saying there is, if your son's getting all C's, it could be good, or it could be not as good as what you're possibly thinking in that picture. 3 years and more of educational data that we have to go on. So if your son has been in Maths 4, Maths 4, Maths 4, well then ultimately advanced maths is off the table. Likewise with English, advanced English is off the table. There's a pattern there. There's not a strength in that subject area for him. Why would we set him up to fail? Okay? And remember, there's almost 200 lessons in Year 11 and 12 that they have to sit through. That's a lot of time, a lot of energy. That's 200 hours of doing something that they might not enjoy or might not be passionate about. That is a long journey. And as Sir said, those welfare issues will surface very, very quickly if we get that wrong. Saying no to certain subjects. Okay, so this is really important, that we will say no. Okay, if you haven't achieved certain data or you haven't met certain criteria, we will say no to those subject choices. Why? Because we want the best for your son. We will work hard with them to get them the right pathway as best we can. If we say no, we also offer that olive branch. And if they can prove me wrong by the end of Year 10, I'm the first to say I got it wrong. I'm the first to go up and congratulate them. But that is out there. So if they want to do advanced English, and as Miss said, they're not above 70%, well, they've got to get above 70% before the end of the year. So at that point in time when they're choosing, it's a no, so we know our numbers and we know our patterns. But if they can prove me wrong, then they can springboard up at that stage at the end of Year 10. Okay? And finally, we're doing this from a genuine desire to see your son be successful. There's over 200 years, I did the maths, of HSC experience sitting in this room tonight, just over there on the side. We do this every year, and again, we're not perfect, but we know the race. We know the drill. We know your sons, We value your sons and we want the best for your sons. Okay? So while we're not perfect, we're pretty close. We're getting it better and better each time we do this. All right? So utilise that tonight. We're all hanging around. Everyone here has a genuine desire to help your son and give him the best pathway. We're not there yet, but as everyone has alluded to, you need to start thinking about those options and what's available and what you think you want to do moving forward and what you think your son wants to do moving forward. Because very early on next year, we start picking those subjects, we start doing the interviews. And as Mr. Horrow said, it's a long process from there to get those subjects in place and the structures and the lines and so forth. But now's the time to start thinking, and now's also the time to start thinking about, okay, what I do in my Year 9 yearlies is going to start mirroring what classes I go into in Year 10 and what that pathway might start to shape like. Okay? There's lots of information. I know it's a little overwhelming. I think you'll be able to replay this back if you want and fast forward, obviously, Mr. Horrow's section. No, I'm joking. But it's the technical side, but we will refresh on that. So look, we're here tonight. Please see us if you've got any questions. I hope it's not overwhelming, but yeah, there's a lot of information we're very much aware of being generated tonight. But look, thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you for coming. We are here if you need us and want to talk to us. Okay? Thank you. And thank you to all the staff who generously gave their time. So.